the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
Okay, if there are no corrections, the minute will be approved by consensus. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the superintendent?
Madam President, we have one communication from the superintendent, the monthly report with possible action of the superintendent of schools. This is an informational item, and although it was noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Will the superintendent please present the report?
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent. I'm excited to share that the second quarter strategic plan report will be available on the strategic plan dashboard next week. This report highlights significant progress with 90% of the tasks either completed or near completion. A few key updates you will find in the quarter two report are communications has finalized site maps and secured a vendor for cloud hosting, enhancing website security. Staff morale initiatives are in motion. The 25-year service pins are on the way, and we are set to get those out in the third quarter. USDA programs and guidelines training remains strong, and our kitchen staffing remains an impressive 98% substitute fill rate. Long-range facilities master plan committee finalization is wrapping up next week with meetings set to begin in February. Curriculum and instruction efforts continue, ensuring the use of district-adopted materials, professional development for Act 20, and future textbook material planning. The MPS Department of School Psychology achieved an exemplary recognition from the National Association of School Psychologists, NASP, the highest level of distinction awarded by the organization. MPS is only one of 2 districts nationwide to receive the exemplary designation in 2025, and one of just six districts in the country currently holding this recognition, as NASP designations remain effective for 5 years. Notably, MPS is the only district in the state of Wisconsin to receive any level of recognition. This honor reflects the district's significant investment in time, resources, and organizational commitment to delivering high-quality psychological services and supports to all students. The exemplary designation is reserved for districts that demonstrate a strong, system-wide, and sustainable infrastructure aligned with all 6 organizational principles of the NASP practice model. It also signifies that MPS has met the nationally recommended school psychologist to student ratio and provides a broad range of comprehensive psychological services, ensuring effective and lasting positive outcomes for students, families, and schools. Today marked the 10-year celebration of M Cubed, and we came together to celebrate our incredible impact, share exciting future plans, and discuss how we can continue transforming the education of over 100,000 students each year. I was there today, and it was a pleasure to see our students, our graduates who are in that program, and see the impact that that program has had with our partners at MATC and UW-Milwaukee, and all the wonderful staff that participate in that and make that happen for our students here in Milwaukee Public Schools. Other great things that are happening: 110 students received diplomas in French language aptitude and were recognized by the French Ministry of Education in Paris. January 13th, we hosted a Montessori open house. On the 16th was the Javits family game night. On the 16th was also our daddy-daughter dance. January 20th, we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday at the Performing Arts Center. Our 18 first, second, and third place art, speech, and writing contest winners were there. And again, it was a wonderful, wonderful event. January 22nd, we hosted another successful job fair. And just January 29th, I was able to attend the Milwaukee Chinese Language School as they celebrated Chinese New Year. I was there and able to make dumplings with Director Ferguson, and I did use my chopsticks very, very well. This evening, I will close with congratulations to all of our winter graduates. Our winter graduation will be taking place tomorrow, January 31st, at Green Tree Preparatory, beginning at 5 p.m. Again, congratulations to all the graduates and their families on that outstanding honor. Second, I want to invite you all to our kindergarten enrollment fair, the first of 2, this Saturday at South Division from 9 to noon. And then again, if you cannot make it this Saturday, on the 22nd, we will have another enrollment fair at North Division from 9 to noon. Thank you. This concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Does the board wish to make any comments? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the board clerk, chief officer, Office of Board Governance?
Madam President, there are 5 communications from the Office of Board Governance. The first communication is the monthly report with possible action from the Board Clerk, Chief Officer, Office of Board Governance. This is an informational item, and although it was noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Will the Office of Board Governance please present this report?
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Tina Owen Moore, Chief Officer, Office of Board Governance. The report from the Office of Board Governance is attached, but I want to draw your attention to a few things that you all probably know very well, but I think it's important for our public to hear as well. A lot of the work of the Office of Board Governance this month has been very focused on the superintendent search and supporting the board with the work to find a new superintendent of schools for Milwaukee Public Schools, with grateful appreciation to Interim Superintendent Eduardo Galvan for all your work as well. We have conducted several interviews this month and narrowed the pool of candidates. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. here on the board floor, the board expects to have a special meeting to consider the finalist candidates and to come back out and announce who those finalist candidates will be. Those finalists will be invited to the district next week, Thursday and Friday, to meet with people across the district, to visit the schools in our city and our community and get to know a little bit about Milwaukee and give our community an opportunity to get to know a little bit about the candidates. There are 2 sessions that we encourage all of you to attend if you are interested in learning more about the candidates. On Thursday, February 6th, from 1 to 4, right here on this floor, each of the candidates will present a little bit to the community and then be available for question and answers. So from 1 to 1:45, the first candidate will present, then from 2 to 2:45, the second candidate, and 3 to 3:45, the third candidate. And then that will happen again in the evening. So we are anticipating that from 5:30 to 6:15, we'll have one presentation, from 6:30 to 7:15, and 7:30 to 8:15. These will be the same candidates presenting at 2 different times so that people who aren't able to come during the day can come in the evening, or who are able to come during the day and might prefer that are able to do so. So we invite you to one or both of those sessions to get to hear from those candidates. There will also be an opportunity for people who attend to fill out a survey and to provide the board feedback on your impressions of those candidates. So we look forward to getting that from all of you. There are also several other items that we have been actively engaged in, but I will let people turn to that report and read it. And if there are any questions from the board, I am happy to answer those.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, what is the next communication from the Office of Board Governance?
The next communication from the Office of Board Governance is action on a request to retire to closed session to confer with legal counsel with respect to pending or probable litigation and pending or probable negotiations. The recommendation is that the board retire to closed session to consider this item.
If there are no objections, we will defer this item to the end of the meeting. Madam Secretary, what is the next communication from the Office of Board Governance?
The next communication from the Office of Board Governance is action on a request to retire to closed session to confer with legal counsel with respect to implementing school resource officers as a result of Act 12. The recommendation is that the board retire to closed session to consider this item.
If there are no objections, we will defer this item to the end of the meeting. Madam Secretary, what is the next communication from the Office of Board Governance?
The next communication from the Office of Board Governance is action on a request to retire to closed session to consider a special report. The recommendation is that the board retire to closed session to consider this item.
If there are no objections, we will defer this item to the end of the meeting. Madam Secretary, what is the next communication from the Office of Board Governance?
The next communication from the Office of Board Governance is the monthly report with possible action on legislative matters concerning Milwaukee Public Schools. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Does the Office of Board Governance wish to make any comments?
I will pass that to Chris Thiel.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
President Herndon, members of the board, Chris Thiel, Office of Governmental Relations. Just a couple of things to touch on this month. One, as a kind of informational item, obviously there's a lot of federal level communication flying out of Washington, D.C. these days, and just wanted to let the board know and let the public know that the administration, Office of Board Governance, we've been in contact with our partners at the national level, including our partners with the Council of the Great City Schools, to really monitor what is real and what the possible impact of some of these declarations may be. So we're still gathering that information and don't have a full report yet, but just want to alert people that if you do see a declaration of some type, we are receiving the information, finding out what's actually law, versus guidance, and what the impact will be for the district. So that work is ongoing. At the state level, we are still in that process where we expect the governor to introduce his budget on February 18th, and then for the work of the state legislature to proceed on the budget. And we're also beginning to see some crafting of legislation for K-12 education and other policy as the legislature enters into its calendar year. One of the things that we have attached to tonight's item, and you may have seen some of the discussion in the public, is the conversation around where proficiency cut scores should be in the state of Wisconsin. This is something that's typically done by state departments of public instruction across the country. You usually have individuals who are called psychometricians, people with expertise in how to do assessment, to put these scores in place. And we expect a bill perhaps is in the first few weeks of next month, to come forward related to the cut score and where that should be placed. And for anyone who's been around education for a while, this is not a new phenomenon. The placing of the cut score, whether at the federal level or at state level, if you remember No Child Left Behind, everybody was going to have 100% proficiency, and when people questioned exactly, are the funds available to move students forward in that manner, there was some phrasing that suggested if you questioned any of that, you perhaps didn't believe students could learn. And we obviously believe that students can learn, but we all also can use some common sense to understand you need to have the resources in place to make sure that students are provided the opportunity to be proficient. And you have that in the attachment as well. That the state of Wisconsin, in the Wisconsin Constitution, demands that all students be provided a sound basic education. And if you read the statement by Justice Crooks in the Vincent v. Voigt decision, he makes clear there that the state must provide students the opportunity to be proficient, and then defines what that means. So we kind of do this when we do the politics part, and when we do the policy part, we sometimes leave behind the fiscal note that says, okay, if we're going to set a cut score, and certainly if we want to say the bar for proficiency is at a higher level, we can do that and say our students should be allowed to meet that level. But then the secondary question comes in, are we providing the opportunity for students to be proficient? And when we did this in 2011, we dramatically raised the cut score bar in the state of Wisconsin, and overnight, a large amount of students were suddenly not proficient because we as adults changed the cut score on them. And in that same year, we cut funding to public schools, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So if we're going to raise the bar for what it means to be proficient, and we are now in this budget year where we have the opportunity with the surplus that we have discussed sitting there to provide support to children, I think we really should also focus not on only where the cut score is, but then if we agree to that, are we going to make sure that we're meeting our constitutional responsibility to provide students the opportunity and the resources needed to meet that bar? So that discussion will be ongoing as an individual bill, and then we'll proceed on the 18th to see what the governor proposes for all parts of policy, including for K-12 education. So that's this evening's update. Happy to answer questions if you have them.
Thank you. Does the board wish to make any comments on this item? Director O'Halloran?
Just one question. Sorry, I'm not feeling well. Do you know what the schedule will be for the Joint Finance Committee meetings and when stakeholders can show up to provide their feedback both on the governor's proposed budget and perhaps voice their support for special education funding or otherwise.
President Herndon, Director O'Halloran, I believe you're speaking of the Joint Finance Committee, which is a very powerful committee at the state level, holds public hearing sessions across the state. And the usual schedule, that official schedule is not out yet. What usually happens is the governor will propose his budget. It's handed over to the Legislative Fiscal Bureau to essentially kind of digest the numbers and provide that information back to the legislature. And then the co-chairs of that Joint Finance Committee will set the schedule for those public hearings. And to your point, it's very important for people to participate in that process. I also would encourage, I mean, people can participate every step along the way. And as we've seen, hopefully there's more consideration this time. And if the governor proposes his budget and there are items there that people support, placing an email or a phone call into your legislator or into the governor's office when you see that information to say, yes, we agree with these policies. If you do, doing that right away is also a helpful part of the process.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency?
Madam President, there is one communication from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency. The first report is the monthly report with possible action on activities within the Office of Accountability and Efficiency. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Would the Office of Accountability and Efficiency please present this report?
Thank you, Chair Herndon. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. That item is before you. I'm going to defer most of my comments for an agenda item a little bit later related to the second corrective action plan. I think most of my comments are better suited for that item. However, I do have with me our Chief Auditor, Mr. Paul Geib, and I'll have him provide his monthly audit update.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, President Herndon, members of the committee, Paul Geib, Chief Auditor, OAE Audit Service. I just wanted to highlight three items very quickly. I did participate in the RFP process for the selection of the district's external auditor for fiscal years 25 through 27. And next week, I believe we're going to be finalizing the scoring for that. Should be coming forward in February. Second thing is that did participate in a discussion on updates to Board Governance Policy 212, and I think that's moving along with all the stakeholders. Last thing I wanted to mention is that did develop a new board member, an existing board member, audit services orientation presentation, and we did have an opportunity to give that trial run to Director Ferguson. Appreciate that too. So that's really all I had for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do board members have any questions or comments of Mr. Geib? Seeing none. Madam Secretary, what is our next item of business?
The next item is action on reports of the independent hearing officers of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors, student expulsions.
The chair will entertain a motion to accept, modify, or reject the reports of the independent hearing officers of the dates and times listed in our agenda. Director O'Halloran.
I move the board approve the independent hearing officers of the following date and time as attached to the item.
A second from anyone? Director Leonard,
I second that.
will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director O'Halloran's motion to approve the reports of the independent hearing officers as attached to this item, Director Ferguson?
Aye.
Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul-Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Jackson? Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Seamson?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
President Hernan?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
We will now have the reports of the standing committees. Since public hearing was given at the committee meeting, the board As is customary, will not be given public hearing on these reports this evening. Madam Secretary, what is the first report?
The first report is that of the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. No items of this report have been set aside for separate consideration.
Thank you. Next, the first report is that of the Committee on Legislation.
President
Rules-
Hernan?
Yes.
Do any board members wish to set any items aside? No.
Seeing none? Okay.
The next report is that of the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement. No items of this report have been set aside for separate consideration.
Next.
The item 4, action on a recommendation to approve the renewal of the non-instrumentality charter school contract for Urban Learning Collaborative for Milwaukee Environmental Science Academy has been set aside at the request of Director Zomber.
Okay. Director Zomber? Not yet. Okay, not yet. All right. Madam Secretary?
No other items to set aside. Would you like to have a motion to approve the balance of the committee's reports?
Yes, please. Director Simpson?
I move that we accept the balance of the committee's reports.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
On this one, Director Simpson's motion to approve the balance of the committee's reports, Director Ferguson? Aye. Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Jackson? Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Simpson?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
President Hernan?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the first item set aside?
The first item set aside is from the report of the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. Item 4, action on a recommendation to approve the renewal of the non-instrumentality charter school contract for Urban Learning Collaborative for Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy. Your committee recommended that the contract with Mesa not be renewed. This item was set aside by Director Zomber. This item has been noticed for possible closed session.
Director Zomber, you have the floor.
I move that we go into closed session pursuant to State Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E.
Director Zomber has moved to retire to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paren 1, paren E, which allows the board to retire to closed session whenever competitive reasons require a closed session. If there's no further discussion, the secretary will please call the roll.
A motion? We need a second.
Director Simpson?
I'll second the motion.
On Director Zomber's motion to retire to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E, Director Ferguson? Aye. Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Jackson? Aye. Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Simpson?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
President Hernan?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
The board will now retire to closed session pursuant to statute 19.85, paren 1, paren E. The board will return to open session to take action on this matter or continue with the remainder of our agenda. Madam Secretary, please note the time. This meeting of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors is back in open session. The board has been in a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85 paren 1 paren E to discuss the renewal of the non-instrumentality charter school contract for Urban Learning Collaborative for Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy. What is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item? Director Zomber.
Thank you, President Herndon. I move to accept the committee's recommendation and direct administration to reach out to the school community to begin the process supporting families and staff.
Thank you. Could we have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, the secretary will please call the roll.
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the committee's recommendation and to direct administration to begin the process of reaching out to families to support families and staff. Yes. Director Ferguson? Aye. Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Jackson? Aye. Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Seamson?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
President Herndon?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, are there any items of regular business?
Yes, there are 2 items of regular business. Item 1 is the reports of the board's delegates.
Would any of our delegates care to give a report at this time? Director Seamson.
Not giving a report, but I will be submitting the monthly updates from the Milwaukee Public Library, and that'll be attached at a later date, but I'll get that to you.
Are there any more reports? Director Leonard?
So this report is from, really it's for regarding the liaison with the DAC, but as I had said previously, this report I would be actually summarizing the results of our community meeting. I'm going to try to keep this short. We have a very long meeting tonight, so it's about 8 pages long. I will not be reading 8 pages to you, okay? But first of all, I want to thank all the parents, staff members, community members that showed up for the meeting. We had 54 people that attended the event. We received a significant amount of input, and I got some help from people in our family outreach department. They did all the thematics and analysis for me. So I'm going to sort of go over briefly some of their basic findings so that we can at least get that information out to everybody. And then, well, let me just do this first, okay? So what they found was, first of all, that in overall topics, there was about 8 different areas: safety, behavior, mental health, academics, and community involvement issues. Those are 6. There's 2 more, but we won't go into those right now. And they were just talking about, we got into a lot of discussions about excessive fighting, inadequate security, inconsistent enforcement of rules, lack of proper training and resources for our safety staff. And some parents and staff felt that safety protocols are not being followed, which puts everyone at risk. And I'm going to go over these just briefly, so we won't have any discussion on unless you have questions, of course. Students who act out with behavior issues, one of the major issues was that students who do act out do not always face clear or consistent consequences, and this makes it hard for teachers to maintain order. They also mentioned very clearly, a number of teachers, and I could validate this, is that in some places there's just a significant overcrowding of classrooms. Mental health areas, many students have unmet emotional needs. There aren't enough counselors or social workers, and we are very aware of this. This is both locally and nationally. That problem has not subsided from the viewpoint of those people that were at the meeting. They also said that there was a need for more trauma-informed care and social-emotional learning to address these issues. With regards to academics, one of the major issues that came out was that students are being passed through grades without mastering basic skills, which leaves them unprepared. And many of the high school staff said, so you're sending them to us, but they're not ready to handle things, and that's where a lot of those behaviors become exacerbated. There's also concerns about parental involvement and trying to find ways to really get our parents much more involved with their students, especially when it comes to high levels of behavior issues. They also mentioned teachers and staff are feeling strained. There's a high turnover rate. Schools need to invest in professional development and mentorship programs to help teachers succeed. And then mentioned systemically that there's disparities, of course, between schools and districts, which create an uneven playing field for students. Some systems and policies are outdated and don't reflect the needs of today's diverse student population. And then there was also some mention of the overuse of technology in our buildings that is not really being used in an effective way. And then I think to just like summarize it is in probably the most important way, there was clearly, even though there was just a diverse group of people that were in these meetings, they understood the complexity of it and how it was all interconnected, that there was no way to look at safety issues in a building or in our district and not look at the academics, not look at mental health. They almost said we have to get away from looking at things in a silo and thinking that if we solve this one thing, it should delineate other problems, but that is not really what they were saying. They felt that this was a much more comprehensive situation, and they were concerned about that. I will add, let me find my notes, and I apologize for being a little bit all over the place here. There we go. Okay. We're going to have like a next steps follow-up type of meeting with this topic and the comprehensiveness of this topic. I believe we're going to be pushing for March on this, and the reason I'm moving it further back is because we're going to be so busy with deciding the next superintendent and other issues that are coming up in February so quickly. I don't want to circumvent this event. I want to make sure that we stay on top of this, get more people involved, get more input from people. We did receive a significant number of solutions. I didn't go over that today, but we did receive a significant number of solutions, and in the next meeting in March, I want to make sure that we take the opportunity to put that out there and make sure that we advertise it so that we can get much more input, and it would be here at central office. I can't give you a date yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. Madam Secretary, what is the next item of Yeah, my mic is on. Madam Secretary, what is the next item of regular business?
Item 2 is the monthly report of the President of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
Thank you. I turned it in on yesterday. I worked pretty hard to get that in, and if you want to see it, it should be posted. Madam Secretary, is there any unfinished business before the board?
We have no items of unfinished business.
Madam Secretary, what is the next item?
Madam President, the January meeting of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel having been canceled, Director Garcia has requested that this month's items be considered tonight.
Very well, I will accept a motion to discharge the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel from consideration of its January agenda items in order for us to take immediate action tonight. May I have that motion, please? Director Garcia.
I move that this item be moved forward as stated.
Okay, a second, please. Director O'Halloran.
Second.
Thank you. If there's no discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Garcia's motion to discharge the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel from consideration of this month's items and to take immediate action on these items at this meeting, Director Ferguson.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul-Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson. Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 1 is action on monthly personnel matters, action on classified personnel transactions, action on certificated appointments, action on leaves of absence, report on resignations and retirements, affirmative action. The recommendation is that the board approve the promotions, appointments, and leaves as listed in the attachments to the item to be effective upon approval by the board.
Would the administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent. The administration requests your approval of the monthly personnel matters as attached in this month's report. I have with me Carol Eady to answer any questions you may have regarding this request.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment slips?
We have no speaker slips on this item.
Do board members wish to make any comments or ask questions? Director Simpson.
I move that we accept administration's recommendations on this item.
Second, please.
Second?
Director Garcia. If there's no further discussion, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Simpson's motion to accept the administration's recommendation on this item, Director Ferguson. Aye. Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson. Aye. Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 2 is action on recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, salary increases, decreases, and limited-term employment contracts exceeding 60 days. The recommendation is that the board approve the promotions, appointments, leaves, and limited-term employment contracts as listed in the attachments to the item to be effective upon approval by the board.
Would administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, the administration requests your approval of this item as it pertains to recommendations for appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, as well as salary increases or decreases and LTE employment. I again have with me Ms. Carol Eady to respond to any questions you may have.
Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment slips?
We do not have any speaker slips on this item.
Do board members wish to make comments or ask questions? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item? Director Simpson?
I move that we accept administration's recommendation on this item.
Could I have a second, please? Director Leonard?
I second.
If there's no further discussion, the secretary please call the roll.
On Director Simpson's motion to approve the administration's recommendation on this item, Director Ferguson.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson. Aye. Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Abstain.
Abstain. And President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes, the motion passes.
Before we continue, before we continue with our agenda, on behalf of the board, I'm taking this away from Director O'Halloran. I assume she asked for us to do this, so I just want to give her that recognition that on behalf of the board, the chair wishes to congratulate all individuals who were presented for appointment, promotion, reassignment, or reclassification. We appreciate your dedication to the MPS community and wish you success in your new role. Let's share in a round of applause for this month's appointee. Thank you so much. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 3 is action on Resolution 2425R-006 by Director Gokul Gandhi on professional development for Act 20. The recommendation is that the board adopt the amended version of Resolution 2425R-006 as attached.
Would the administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent. The administration accepts Resolution 2425R-006 and recommends it be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment slips?
We have several speaker slips.
Thank you.
Director Gokul Gandhi would like to speak to the resolution too.
Right, I was just going to ask for her to take over right now.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I want to just provide a little bit of context for why this is coming forward and also provide some explanation for the amended resolution that was published on 1/23/25, giving everyone time to understand what this new resolution does. So during my time on the SASE committee, we have been asking for what we're doing around reading, the science of reading, and how we're really going to fundamentally address our students' needs via reading on a monthly basis. As we think about what this district needs and what our kids need to really be successful, especially after the NAEP scores that were published last night, I really wanted to put something forward that took our kids' needs into consideration and really expedited our process into the science of reading. Now, I realize that first resolution was a little bit rocky. I read every single email that I was sent, and I want you to know I heard you. I understand what you were saying. And this resolution preserves and respects teacher time. Teacher time in this resolution is intact, so thank you for your participation in democracy and sending me those emails. I listened to the feedback, I reflected, and I really believe that this new resolution is a win for our teachers, is a win for administration, and most importantly, is a win for our children who so desperately need innovation in reading curriculum and professional development to really move this district forward in a positive way. So thank you, and I hope that we can have some great discussion around the resolution.
Thank you very much. Moving on, I'm going to ask for Yolanda Schutke to come forward, please. Okay, Yolanda Schutke? Okay. Thank you. I only have 4. Go ahead, please. Please state your state your first name and spell your last name.
My first name is Yolanda. Last name is Shanke, Schuenke.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I was just going to say, I really hope you don't take teachers' prep time away, because it seems like they're always taking things away from teachers. I already spend 2 to 3 hours a night at home on my lesson planning. You know, that would be spending more time. It's almost like 24/7 teacher stuff, you know. I have a little bit of a life outside of teaching. And if you take the teacher prep time away, well, in high school, whenever there's not a sub to fill in for teachers that are absent, they use our prep time, you know, have one at a time go in to fill in for those teachers. And if we don't have prep time, what are you going to do if there's no subs to fill in? So some pretty important things to think about.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your hard work, too.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Dawn Tower. She's yielding her time. The next person is Quentin Claiborne.
Hey, Quentin Claiborne, K-L-A-B-O-N. We have a long struggle ahead of us. The 2024 NAEP scores came out, comparing us to the rest of the nation. Balancing for demographics, Wisconsin ranked 34th in 4th grade reading. Wisconsin's Latin students scored worse than their counterparts did 2 years ago. Wisconsin's Black students scored last in the nation. Even worse, states that barely spend any money are now among our country's highest performers. There's no reason Mississippi, Indiana, Louisiana, and Florida should even be competitive with us, given our spending levels and talented teachers. Milwaukee's reading results were even more tragic. Milwaukee had 9% of students college ready and 73% below grade level. Milwaukee ranked last for Black students, behind even Detroit and Baltimore. English learner students from Houston, Chicago, and Miami, whose native languages are not English, outscored Milwaukee's English native students. 17 states' special needs students outscored Milwaukee as a whole. About 80% of Milwaukee students were likely to get a question wrong on the meaning of an 8-line Shel Silverstein poem. I've praised some of your great reading adjustments, and it is phenomenal that my board member, Director Gokul Gandhi, introduced a resolution to accelerate fixing these problems, and I'm glad that she listened to feedback on balancing all of the concerns about after-school time. But this resolution needs to get you to finish letters training this summer. Until you finish letters training, teacher retraining, and educators understand better how to best teach literacy, identify problems, and resolve them, we will not see improvement. If you choose an August 2026 deadline instead of August 2025, you will make the adult lives of 23,000 K4 to third graders significantly worse. So please, all of you, do two things. Ask Dr. Evans, who's hopefully in the back, to put in simple percentage terms how far staff are through letters. What percent? If we are even 25% through, please get to 50% by the end of the year. Then pay MTEA teachers fairly to finish up early in the summer before students come back. Only a third of the teachers need the training. They can get paid for it with the referendum money, and I can't think of a better use for it. It does not take 2 years to finish a 3-credit training course unless you decide it does. Please use this resolution to get letters done this summer, blow away other districts who did not, and get our kids thriving in September. 10 years from now, your legacy will not be cleaning up Keith Posley's messes, but being the board that changed the headlines, broke through poverty, and got all children to read and thrive. Thank you.
Next is Ingrid Walker Henry.
Good evening, Board. My name is Ingrid Walker Henry, WALKER-HENRY. I'm the president of the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association, representing over 5,600 workers in the District of Milwaukee Public Schools. The amended resolution that you see here tonight could have been presented to MTEA in the fall. The MTEA and administration have a long history of productive and collaborative work on important issues that impact workers and students. It's the job of the union to advocate for workers' condition of work. When the administration or the board engages in autocratic, top-down management, they create the hostile work environment. This board has heard from hundreds and hundreds of outraged, distraught MTEA members. We can all agree, we do have serious work to do, but the way we do our work is through the meet and confer process where we can discuss, problem solve, and come to agreements. It is our understanding that we will be working with the interim administration for the next 5 months. It is imperative that the interim administration meet and confer with MTEA in good faith as we work together for the rest of the 24-25 school year. MTEA is asking this board to ensure that the interim administration engages in productive, good faith, meet and confer efforts as we move forward in the spring budget process and as we strive to do our best for students and for workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 2 speaker slips where they did not wish to speak. Should I read the name? Okay. Amanda McLahone, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, and Anna Wolfson are the ones that do not wish to speak, and that's it for our speakers. Moving forward, do our board members wish to make comments or ask questions on this item? Director Leonard.
So, obviously, I am glad we made the adjustments for the PD because we definitely need it. And I do sense a great sense of urgency. I mean, when I look at the NAEP scores, that's one thing. But really, we have a job to do. We have to produce. There's no other way about it. And even though I at one time was a person that did not care for the letters training, and I opposed it vehemently as a middle school teacher, when I finally had the requirement that I had to learn some of it and actually saw the results of it, I know that for me, I'm a strong supporter of everybody getting the training, at least everybody up to 3rd grade getting the training, so that we can definitely get off the ground on this. Because if we don't do a better job getting them, every student by 3rd grade should have proficient math skills and reading skills. This is just not that difficult. I disagree with that. Anyone that thinks it can't happen, it can. Any of us who have been as teachers, we know we can be successful at that level. That's a basic requirement. And as a middle school teacher, when I would get students that could not read, the difficulty of actually progressing forward with them became almost insurmountable. I can't imagine what it's like in high school. I really can't. So, yeah, I do support the amended resolution. I do know we have to move forward on this, and I think we're in a good place. I would love to be able to pay for everyone to have it done this summer, but as I have said to some members and people out there, I don't think we got through on that one at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers on this item? Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. I just want to move approval of the amended version of the resolution as attached.
Thank you. Director Ferguson.
We need a second before more.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could we have a second, please, and then we'll move on?
Second?
Thank you. Now, Director Ferguson, with your question.
Thank you. Could the administration describe the amendments to the original proposal?
Administration.
Director Ferguson, President Herndon, members of the board. Initially, the amendment or the proposal was to increase PD time. We had explored different options and added a bunch of what a wish list would be in a perfect world. Obviously, time has always been the issue with anything to do with professional development, right? Teacher time is valuable. Teacher time during the school day is very hard to negotiate simply because we want our teachers in front of students and challenges outside of anybody's control. So amended was that we would be doing, adding additional 4 early release days, which could be dedicated to PD, as we have described, that is needed for all students. This is time that isn't after school, it isn't on a weekend, it is dedicated to make sure we move forward.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions?
No, I was just going to say thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to pass the gavel.
Director Herndon?
Thank you. A couple of things that I'd like to ask administration about this whole thing is that initially when the state did the mandate, I understand there was supposed to be money coming through to provide us the ability to do the things we need to do to roll this out. I think that it is critical that our children learn how to read, and the further they go through school, the less successful they are, and far too many give up. So I want to know, where do we stand in communicating with the state for the services and the funding that they are supposed to be providing statewide?
Administration?
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent. Yes, you are correct. There was supposed to be initially money to go along with implementation of Act 20. That has been held up at the state level. The makers of the law intended for districts, not just MPS, but all districts to be able to enact this, not only with materials, but with training, with support from the state in terms of individuals that would come out and help with all of this. To be clear, DPI has provided support as much as they can, but that money still has not been released. Not only Milwaukee Public Schools, but districts across the state have asked that money be released so that we can continue this path towards implementing this with fidelity so that all students, not only in Milwaukee, but the state, can move forward with this, and we'll continue to ask.
President Herndon?
Yes, so bottom line is that in terms of funding, we're absorbing funds that we need for another purpose in order to support this as best we can, which is not 100%.
President Herndon, members of the board, that is correct. We have to follow the mandate of the law, and subsequently, even if the funding isn't there, we have to make sure that we do it. It's the right thing to do. Obviously, we want our students to do better in reading and math, so we have to move forward with that. And that does obviously take away from other areas. If that money had come to us as was initially intended, we wouldn't have been spending money that we had allocated to other areas.
President Herndon,
Yes, thank you very much. I'll take the gavel back.
passed.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the board in relationship to this item?
We have a motion on the floor already.
Okay, I got lost there to the conversation. Could I have a motion? What is the pleasure of the board?
I'll go ahead and call. President Herndon, I can go ahead and call it on Director O'Halloran's motion to adopt the amended version of Resolution 2425R-006 as attached. Director Ferguson?
Aye.
Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Jackson?
No.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Seamson?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
President Herndon?
Aye.
That is 8 ayes and 1 no. The motion passes.
Okay, Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 4 is action on Resolution 2425R-007 by Director Ferguson on a financial analysis concerning scanning equipment. The recommendation is that Resolution 2425R-007 be placed on file.
Would the administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan. In 2022, the district contracted to conduct a safety assessment, which was completed between July 2022 and September 2023. A comprehensive report was presented to the board on September 28, 2023. Following the completion of the report, the district has continued to work with schools regarding the needs and costs for school safety measures. The administration believes that the 2022 study is still a reliable resource for current decision-making relative to school safety needs. Therefore, we recommend Resolution 2425R-007 be filed. Thank you.
Do any members of the public have speaker slips in for us on this? Okay.
We do not. We do not.
Okay. Do board members wish to make comments or ask questions?
No, over the past few weeks, I have met with the administration, several different officers in Mr. Galvan's administration, and I'm satisfied with the information that they've provided me, and I'll move forward with what they've provided. Thank you.
Okay. So, Madam Secretary.
We need a second.
A second, please. Director Seamson.
I'll second that motion.
If there's no further discussion, please call the roll.
On Director Ferguson's motion to place Resolution 2425R-007 on file, Director Ferguson?
Aye.
Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Jackson? Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Seamson?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
President Herndon?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 5 is action on a request for approval of a job description for Director 1, Title IX, and Student Protections. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached job description for Director 1, Title IX, and Student Protections.
Would administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent, in an effort to stay compliant with federal discrimination laws, a position for Title IX and student protections is necessary. Therefore, we are presenting a job description for Director 1, Title IX, and student protections for your approval. I have with me Carol Eady and Mr. Boswell prepared to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members of the public have speaker slips?
We do not have speaker slips on this item.
Okay. Do board members wish to make comments or ask questions? Director Leonard?
Just some clarity, because I remember at one time, we had a position like this in our district. Is this like because we just have had a vacancy with this, or is this a completely new position? I'm a little bit, just want to need some clarity on that.
Administration.
President Herndon, Director Leonard, members of the board. Again, this is a position that was created earlier. We just went to approve the position title. This is something that, with the Title IX laws, we have to respond in a certain manner that's required. And we have to go through a very specific process, and this is a position that interacts between employee relations, student services, and a number of different areas that requires this according to what the federal and state regulations are requesting from us.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions from the board members? If not, what is the pleasure of the board? Director Garcia.
I move to approve the job description of Director 1, Title 9, and Student Protections as presented by administration.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Garcia's motion to approve the job description for Director 1, Title 9, and Student Protections, Director Ferguson.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 6 is action on the request to approve modifications to the three-tier busing model. The recommendation is that the board approve the modified three-tier bell schedule effective July 1st, 2025, as outlined in the attached documents.
Would administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, I am joined by Michael Harris and David Pfeifferich to share information on a request to modify the district's three-tier busing schedule. As always, we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have following the sharing of this information. Thank you. Mr. Pfeifferich.
Thank you, Superintendent Galvan. President Herndon, members of the board, David Pfeifferich, Senior Director of Business and Transportation Services. The item today that I'll be presenting is a request to modify the bell schedule for specifically first-tier schools. And the request is to move the first-tier schools to a 7:15 bell in the morning. I have a PowerPoint with 4 slides that I'd like to go over, and then maybe take a moment to kind of recap and, of course, answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I have speaker slips here.
He's going to present his slides.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Again, thanks for the opportunity here today, and I'll quickly just go over the PowerPoint. In a nutshell, the problem of practice here today is that we have a current bell schedule system where the time allotted between the bus tiers for FY25 in particular are insufficient to ensure a timely student arrival between tiers 1 and 2, and thus creating compression issues with tier 3. And in fact, it's creating compression issues for both tier 2 and tier 3 as a clarifying point. The bell schedule in FY21 as adopted has had 2 modifications since that April 2020 board item due to increased high school minute needs and due to a modification at the K-5 school day that has had an adverse impact on the transportation department's ability to effectively tier those 3 tiers efficiently. The desired outcome here today is to increase on-time arrival and to minimize disruptions to instruction by optimizing the bus schedule and implementing effective strategies that alleviate these compression issues. The table here that you're going to see is effectively just what we have today, and that is in that second column there, the current 3-tier model, and the proposal that we're looking to get approved tonight in that third column is the proposal. I think there's a point of clarification here because I've gotten some feedback on there, and before I get into the times, I just want to kind of make the note here in the second row where it talks about cost/savings. This is not a cost savings item. This is cost neutral. This is really about achieving a timely arrival that impacts student achievement and outcomes. So from that standpoint, the $68 million current 3-tier model would continue to be $68 million in the subsequent years moving forward, assuming all things remain static. Under this current system, we have the bell right now at 7:25. So when you're looking at that table, you're seeing the first tier, the second tier, and the third tier. You see multiple rows there because it's the difference between the required minutes at the K-5 level or the required minutes at a K-5 K-8 level for both that first tier and that third tier. And in fact, for the third tier, there is a traditional middle school model that has a few different extra minutes allotted. And so that's what you're basically seeing from left to right is 6:40, 7:40, or 8:30, 35, 8:40. Those are the first pickup point for a particular route. The 7:25, 8 o'clock, 9:05, 9:10, 9:15 is the actual bell schedule for the respective schools in question here, whether it's Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. And then that respective 2:10, 3, 4 times are whether or not you have 6 hours and 45 minutes in a school day, 7 hours in a school day at a K-8 level, or more if you're traditional middle school or high school. So those times correspond with the required minutes from Wisconsin State Statute for Department of Public Instruction. And of course, that last column alludes to the times that the last basically drop-off points for that particular tier. And that's really used for illustration purposes, so that when we get to kind of explaining the problem on a practical level, you can kind of see how compression works effectively. Now, the proposal there, obviously, you see is effectively everything moving up at the first tier from 7:25 to 7:15, and for all other respective schools in the second tier and the third tier, no change. And so for that, below that, we're talking about cost neutral, as I had alluded to, number of buses, number of routes, all those things that kind of allude to just how our operational viewpoint is right now under the current state. One thing I just want to point out there is that, if you can go back, Mr. Harris, the last row, 39 minutes. I mean, this is important. This is basically the average time that you need to run a route in between the tiers. And so if you have any tiering that does not allow for this, and again, we'll get to some granular level examples on this, that's where you have overlaps and where this compression comes into play. And, you know, by compression, what it means is buses don't have enough time to get to school on time, causing students to be late and miss instructional time and, you know, everything that goes with that. So the proposal here, as it lays out, really just talks about, you know, the current pickup point, the current teacher workday, and the bell schedule current, and then on the right-hand side, the proposal. So it's a lot of the same information on as in the prior slide, but what you kind of just need to see here is that we've got buses arriving under the current state, let's just say at 7:15. The bell's ringing at 7:25, and so depending upon the situation at the school, buses, when they arrive at 7:15, may or may not be able to effectively unload buses until the bell, right? And this is where we kind of, again, get into this model. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And of course, when you get to the FY26 proposal, that's where you see these modifications, again, for first-tier schools only, shifting 10 minutes. The rationale, just in real basic terms, is that tiering compression is the current state. It's FY25. It creates late buses due to inadequate spacing and timing between the bell schedules. Why? Why did this happen? Well, post-2020, April 2020, when we made these implementations, there was 5 minutes added to the high school bell to allow for additional scanning time. And then there was 5 minutes added to the high school day for hallway travel. So you added 10 minutes to the second tier high school time, and there was no corresponding shift to the first tier or third tier. So from a logistical standpoint, the transportation operations lost 10 minutes of run time. The second point here is that the bell schedule was also adjusted for K-5 schools after the 3-tier rollout to basically account for requirements in DPI minutes not being 7 hours for K-5 schools, instead being 6 hours and 45 minutes. And those 15 minutes were taken off of the first tier, 5 minutes in the morning from 7:20 to 7:25, and 10 minutes at the end of the day from 2:20 to 2:10. So again, we'll get a little bit further towards that as we give an example on this. The rationale is we need 35 to 40 minutes between the routes. That is an absolute requirement. The city of Milwaukee is a big rectangle, so you do have scenarios where school enrollment is beyond a mileage threshold that would allow for a 20-minute route to successfully get to school on time. And that is, again, exemplified in those prior slides where we talk about the average route time for the district. And finally, what we'll see here is that the shift in the first-tier bell schedule being requested, it will in fact dramatically improve timely AM bus arrival. And of course, that translates to increased student achievement and does not change the total hours of a teacher workday or a school day. Now, I'm going to take a minute here to kind of just talk about what this means, right? So from a real practical standpoint, really the issue is kids are arriving late. They're arriving late to school every day. Not everybody is arriving late, but there's enough where this is something that really does need to be addressed. And it needs to be addressed primarily because of, like I said, the loss of the time between FY21 when this was passed and the current state. Adding buses doesn't successfully address the problem. And that is primarily because when you look at the current system, and I'll just give a practical example here. If a bell is 7:25 and there is not adequate staffing to get them off prior to 7:25, they're going to get off at 7:25 and the bus is going to leave at 7:30. The next tier, obviously the bell rings at 8 o'clock now. Used to ring at 8:05 and now rings at 8 o'clock. We want buses there at least 5 minutes prior to 8 o'clock. 7:55 is really preferred 10 minutes prior, especially in large high schools where you got 20, 30 buses out there just kind of doing their logistics. So if you have left the school empty at 7:30 and you're expected to be at the next school at 7:50, 7:55, the math just tells you you don't have enough time. You got 25 minutes. What do we need? About 35 minutes. So I need 10 minutes. So between 2020 and now, lost 15 minutes from an operational standpoint. No changes in our system, just the de facto results of the increased time at the high school level and the reduction at the K-5 school level. I'm asking for 10 of those minutes back. Why? So that kids can get to school on time. That is a fact. That is literally what's happening. The last point that I think I'll make is, as we shifted from 2020, when the bell schedule was 7:20 to 2:20, again, lost those times. We had buses since 2020 arriving at 7:15, like we always had planned. As those minutes adjusted, particularly at the first-tier schools, we tried to really kind of Band-Aid the issue or the situation by using non-teachers, paras, to help with the unloading process. And so because the bell is ringing at 7:25 now, if the bus continued to arrive at 7:15, if a school was adequately staffed with paras or support staff, then those particular staff members were, in fact, assisting to get students off the bus at 7:15. And in those situations, we really did have that 10 minutes that we needed. The problem is, from an equity standpoint, if the school is not adequately staffed for paras to do the job that is necessary to get kids off buses, buses were arriving at 7:15. They were sitting on the bus till 7:25, and then the buses started to unload. And those 10 minutes were, again, effectively the 10 minutes that we need to get moving and to run those next runs. So there were schools where that 7:15 was being accomplished successfully, and it is a product of whether or not you were adequately staffed in the building to open up your building and get them off the bus. And if you're not adequately staffed, they're not getting off the bus to not be supervised on the playground or to not be supervised inside of the building. They're staying on the bus. And so, what this item does effectively is it starts the school day at 7:15 so that all staff are in the building, and when the buses let the kids off, they can leave at 7:15, and we have our 35 minutes to get schools on time with the students. At this time, I'll end there. If you got questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from boards? Director Simpson? I'll get to those. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I am wondering, have we solicited any feedback from parents on this proposal? And if so, can you describe what that feedback was, or how it was solicited? And if not, I'd like to know why not.
Administration.
President Herndon, Director Ferguson, members of the board. In direct answer, there was no feedback sought. This was brought to the board as a way to mitigate some of the other concerns that have been coming to us as Mr. Pfeiffer described, with students arriving late, and also students getting picked up late at that third tier was the other problem. So this is all, again, when we had these initial discussions, when we moved from a 2-tier to a 1-tier, there was a lot of discussion around that. And there was decisions made, again, about which group fit into which tier. So for example, I know there was great discussion about, we didn't want to push too far into the evening because then it would impact students getting home at late hours. Also for students that, for example, in high school, it impacted their ability to either work or participate in sports. So there was a lot of discussion then about why K through 5, K through 8 schools were in that first tier, so to speak. And again, as Mr. Pfeiffer described, we initially had that time built in, but we lost that time. So no, we did not ask for feedback, but again, these were all discussions that were held previous to this when this was initially brought forth.
Any follow-up?
Yes, if we were to approve this tonight, the proposal, how soon would it take effect?
Administration.
President Herndon, Director Ferguson, this is for next school year.
Follow-up, go ahead.
Yes, I think that the administration should engage parents on this particular topic, especially since it's going to affect them so strongly. And I think we have time to do it if it's not going to take effect until next year anyway.
Administration.
President Herndon, Director Ferguson, members of the board, we'll certainly, move forward however the board directs us to. In terms of time, yes, we have a little time, but again, we want to make sure whatever is decided upon, we'll have enough time, one, to message that in terms of when we do enrollment and things of that nature. We need to make sure that our families know for next year what time schools will start and end, so they can make plans accordingly.
Okay, any follow-up? I'll go through the speaker slips at this point. Oh, you do? Okay.
Question. So, similar to what you said, but a little bit different. I think the element of the issue is, one thing we can't avoid is human beings showing up to work late or not at all. I think that's the biggest issue. So how do we put pressure on our vendors, different bus companies, to at least ensure that their employees show up? Because that's the biggest problem.
Administration.
Director Jackson, President Herndon, members of the board, David Pfeiffer, Senior Director of Business Transportation Services. I want to make sure there's a clarifying point. There's ample drivers to run in this district. In fact, there's a surplus of drivers in this district. Whether that is something that people feel anecdotally is not happening, it is in fact the case. And I'll point out we've in fact gained almost about 80, 90 drivers above and beyond the needs since the start of the school year. And so we've gotten to a point where we're actually transitioning non-yellow bus work, what we call alternative vehicle service, cabs, vans, things like that, back into yellow buses because the capacity is there. Now, obviously, that is different than saying, on a snow day, people call in above and beyond the normal rates, right? And we deal with those repercussions just like everybody in every industry deals with those repercussions. But I want to point out the vast majority of our challenges today are not because drivers aren't showing up. The vast majority of our challenges today is because we're giving 25 minutes to run a 45-minute route, right? So, you know, we can continue to have discussion, right? And again, I understand the need to solicit feedback, but the proposal is set forth to resolve a known issue based on feedback from families all year. And I've spoken with the vast majority of board members on a semi-regular basis for the last 2 years about why they're getting feedback from their constituents about late buses. And so I think the challenge a lot of times is, you know, we have a specific impact on maybe non-bus population here today that is inordinately going to impact them because of some changes. We do have buses that are showing up at 7:15 and waiting for 10 minutes to get off of the bus. And so, you know, I'd like to at least acknowledge that when we try to at least utilize the systems that are in place, we have challenges due to staffing all over the place, right? It's not drivers exclusively, it's going to be within the school buildings as well. And if we know just from an organizational kind of like logistics that we have set up a system after implementation, after adoption in 2020, that is going to create delays, I mean, I think there's a responsibility to fix that here, right? So we had the minutes in 2020. We lost 15 minutes post 2020. I'm not even asking for all of the 15 minutes that were lost, with or without, you know, a discussion on the board floor after 2020 when, you know, added 10 minutes to the high school or took 15 minutes away from the K-5 schools. I'm really just trying to right size these parameters so that if you get 10 minutes back, we have students getting to school on time. And again, I work in the industry day to day, every day. I'm not bringing this item here just because. I mean, this is an issue that we've identified for the past 2 years. We've talked extensively about this to some degree about how this came to be. And honestly, I'm just trying to correct the problem here today. And again, I understand the feedback piece. I don't want to move away from that integral part, but what I definitely don't want to do is create a scenario where we get to FY26 and I have significant amounts of buses showing up late because our region stayed the same, the distance for students is the same to these schools, and I don't have enough time to get them there on time, and they're missing instruction. And I think that's the message I'm trying to get out here today, and I hope it's received well. Thank you.
Any follow-up?
No.
Director Ferguson?
I just want to reiterate, Madam President, that I hear you, and I think that this is something that we should engage parents on. It's just a basic customer service thing. If you're going to affect parents, at least give them an opportunity to say something or to weigh in on it. And I hear you saying that you've gotten feedback over the past 2 years. Well, that's exactly what I was asking. What has the feedback been, and how have we arrived at this particular proposal? I would like to support the proposal, especially to get kids to school on time. I would like to support that, but again, we are talking about an important constituency here when it comes to parents and allowing them the opportunity to weigh in on what happens in their school district.
Thank you. Any further? Okay, Director Simpson, or Halloran.
Thank you, Madam President. I think had the communication rollout been a little different, I think we would also be hearing from the constituents. To be clear, I'm a first-tier parent, so I'm potentially looking at the 10-minute change. I'm the one that will be paying the price here tonight. But what is lost in this discussion, I think, are the Tier 1 parents obviously feel like this was a surprise. They didn't know this was coming, and it wasn't directly communicated. However, the Tier 3 parents who I have heard from, whose students are missing 45 minutes of school regularly are not here. And had the communication been rolled out differently, we would also be hearing from the parents who are saying, why does my kid miss out on several hours of instruction every, week, basically, because this tier is, last. It's placed last in order. So I just do want to reiterate and, piggyback on Director Ferguson's comments that the communication really could have been rolled out in a different way. I was speaking with the principal this week, and they were like, oh, I didn't even know that was on there. So maybe some staff members didn't even, have the chance to really roll it around in their head. I think what we run up against is we have fixed levers to pull on this. And so we can change time, we can change distance, we can change resources, but it sounds like even with additional drivers and buses, that I'm not sure that would alleviate the compression. And so we're left with just very unpopular decisions because we have tried to limit the distance in the past. You change the service model, and we have done that incrementally, and it was not well received. And so I know we will probably hear very unhappy parents tonight, but I just want to level set that any of the considerations really kind of come up as unpopular decisions. So we're just kind of choosing between very difficult decisions. And I did vote against the 3-tier, but I do, it was a timing issue. And I think in retrospect, we were able to save several millions of dollars. And as we're looking at a continued budget that is shrinking and we have gaps and potentially state mandated programs that we are now having to pick up the tab on, we are just left with making these decisions. And so I just wanted to, give that kind of perspective, because I am a tier 1 parent, but I also hear from the tier 2s and tier 3s.
Thank you. Administration, any response?
President Herndon, members of the board, again, just to maybe not say the same thing, but obviously Director O'Halloran does point out that another reason that this was brought forward is, and again, we understand and we accept that, we should have maybe communicated this better, or in a different way, but yes, we do receive a number of parents who concerns about not only getting to school late, but those third tiers then also arriving late to pick up their students to bring them home. So that's the other side of this, right? And yes, we understand that, and yes, there's never going to be a perfect answer to this because of earliness and lateness and work and sports and all those things. So again, upon the recommendation of the board, we'll be happy to survey, we'll be happy to do all, but we will need to make a difficult decision at one point in time as to where we get that time back so that we can better serve everybody at a whole and understanding that there is no perfect solution, so to speak.
Thank you. I have some speaker slips. Oh, Director O'Halloran.
That's okay. Director Simpson, that's okay.
Okay.
It's a long night. Yeah, so Director O'Halloran kind of spoke to what I've been hearing from constituents, right? That tier 2, tier 3 group, I get calls from families all the time about, late pickups in the morning, getting to school late, missing instruction. I just feel like we're really in between like a rock and a hard place with this. It's very difficult, and I just want to acknowledge the complexity of the situation, what it takes to try to come up with a solution, given sort of like our limited options to work with. Unfortunately, we live in a city where transportation is a huge need for our families, and so we have to meet that need in the best way that we can. I am curious because you were talking about the early start schools that are not able to get children off the bus due to staffing, maybe not enough paras or whatever. Do you have a sense of how many schools that is? And like, if we could staff them, would that help the situation at all?
Administration.
President Herndon, Director Seamson, members of the board. It's a hard question to ask because it's not just the staffing on paper. It's, again,
The time they start.
well, and it's also, as Director Jackson, not referencing teachers and paras, but when people call in at the school level as well, it impacts that. And more specifically, as Mr. Pfeifferich had mentioned, you know, when this was originally developed, that K-5 group that we lost kind of that 15 minutes that we had to build in. So, you know, the adjustment isn't just on the student pickup or delivery time. It also, by doing this in the way it was presented, we'd adjust some of the staff time so that we weren't so reliant just on paras or a few people in the building as the teacher start time. Not the amount of time, but the start and end time would be adjusted to account for some of that in a way that would make it more easy to manage. Because again, due to budget constraints and just natural vacancies, when we talk about paras, for example, as we've shared many times, many of our paras are wonderful and awesome, and they've become teachers, which then, you know, kind of decrease the ranks of paras that we have available. And you add in the fact that obviously, you know, teaching isn't always a profession that people are going into as they used to. So it's a long-winded answer to say that, you know, we have a few schools where they can make it work, but it's increasingly challenging due, again, to either vacancies or when people are absent, there's just not enough of them to go around to do that in a safe way.
Any follow-up?
No, not at this time.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Director Zomper.
Thank you, President Herndon. I agree, it's a very complex situation. We've been both, you know, early start parent or tier 1 parent, and then more recently tier 3, and not so much this year, but last year, which was a different route because he was going to a different school. I mean, I was getting a call every day saying my kid was absent because he just didn't get to school on time, and they did attendance and he wasn't there. But I also was that parent when we were first switching to the earlier schedule, like going around with my clipboard, getting parents to sign petitions and surveys, like, don't do it. So I get, like, I've lived both worlds of, you know, like, so I get how hard it is for families, and I wish we had the funding to just do 2 tiers, spread them out, and, you know, like in a perfect world, there would be a better solution that was more affordable. I don't really have any answers, but I just want to say, like, I get a lot of communications from parents about the tier 3 being late. That's probably the most common transportation question or concern I get is like, my kid is not getting to school on time. So just wanted to share that perspective.
Administration.
Directors on board, President Herndon, members of the board, David Pfeifferich. I just kind of want to point out, just to the point that was discussed a little bit earlier, the complexity of this, and moving times we know is a very unpopular decision. I came to this board in 2018 talking about moving 5 minutes, and we talked about, well, how about first tier move 5 minutes? How about second tier move 5 minutes? How about anybody move 5 minutes? And, honestly, nobody wants to move the 5 minutes, and I completely understand because it's a disruption, and that is absolutely understood, but we're faced with a finite amount of choices. We're either going to move the first tier, we're going to move the second tier. And if we move the second tier, you also have to move the third tier. And so when you start really talking about like impacts, if you've using, let's just say 150 schools, 50 schools in the first tier, 50 in the second, and the 50 in the third, if you decide not to move first tiers, right, and you say, no, we're just going to move the second tier, you're actually moving second and third, so you're impacting 100 schools, not just 50 schools. And then the second point that I want to point out is when we discussed moving first tiers up, part of the discussion was, well, we already have buses coming at 7:15. So knowing that about 50 to 60% of the population at any given first-tier school is bused, those schools were already arriving at 7:15. So the impact was obviously lessened from a percentage standpoint for first-tier schools, basically in half, because half of those students were already getting there at around 7:15. So, knowing the complexity of this all and, how they're all interrelated, hopefully it's appreciated that, yeah, there's no popular choice. There is no popular choice, but in order to have an adequate tiering system and operational excellence, you have to design the system with enough time in between the tiers. And you can say, well, you should have did that in 2020. Well, we did, right? And so that's the point that I'm trying to put out there is post-2020, there perhaps should have been a little bit more dialogue about why did we add 10 minutes without moving the tiers? Why did we shift the first-tier school 15 minutes without having discussion? And, from a current state, it is about trying to impact the people that are calling from two-thirds of the system that are feeling the repercussions of things that they have literally no control over. And so, absolutely understand. And we've been doing the conversation about tiering for 6 years now. And I've been here for all 6 years of this, and we've been to this board floor multiple times to have the same conversation about what's the best way to communicate? What's the best way to get people to agree to a 5-minute change? And I think, the hard part is nobody wants to change if they're the ones that have to change. And I think that's, I think that's the tough part when you got to consider the system and not just part of the system. And again, I hope it's appreciated here that it is not to adversely impact a particular group of schools. It's to provide equitable distribution of good services across all 3 tiers. And I think hopefully that's the message that I'm trying to get across here is it's really to fix the people that are really impacted from a instructional time currently. Right now, when we have low achievement, we have bad, less than perfect attendance, and buses are part of that problem. And I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to obviously be part of the solution. And of course, I'm here to answer any more questions you might have.
Okay, if the board doesn't have any more questions, I'd like to go to the speaker slips. First is Maggie Kern. Thank you. Please state your name, spelling your last name, please.
I'm Maggie. Last name is Kerr. I oppose the New Start changes for several reasons. One, student health and well-being. Studies consistently show that young children need 9 to 12 hours of sleep for healthy brain development, emotional regulation, and physical health. Already, a 7:25 a.m. start time goes against what the American Academies of Pediatrics and the CDC recommend, which is an 8:30 a.m. start time. An earlier start time would force many students to wake up before 6 a.m., cutting into their necessary sleep and increasing risks of attention issues, anxiety, and academic struggles. 2, academic performance decline. Sleep-deprived children have difficulty focusing, processing information, and retaining knowledge, leading to lower test scores and classroom engagement. Research from the CDC and the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, recommends later start times for better student outcomes. Moving earlier than it already is would contradict best practices, which it already does. 3, transportation safety concerns. An earlier start time means students, especially younger children, 5, 6 years old, waiting for buses in the dark. That increases safety risks. 4, family hardships and accessibility issues. Many working parents already struggle with early morning routines. A shift earlier would force them to find alternative childcare or disrupt family schedules. Families with multiple children in different schools may face transportation and supervision challenges, leading to more tardinesses and absences. Dismissed at 2 p.m. is extremely hard on families, especially when CLC and other after-school programs have capacity limits. Currently, the 2:20 p.m. dismissal for Tier 1 schools is already a struggle for most parents. Barely any parent is done work at 2:20 p.m. 5, impact on teachers and staff. Earlier school start times contribute to teacher fatigue, lower morale, and burnout, potentially leading to higher turnover and difficulty attracting qualified educators. Support staff, including cafeteria and custodial workers, may face scheduling challenges affecting school operations. 6, misalignment with research and national trends. Leading health and education organizations recommend later school start times for better student outcomes. While some districts have experimented with earlier times, most have reversed course due to negative effects. Moving to an earlier schedule would put our district behind national best practices and potentially harm student success. A really great case study is New Canaan, Connecticut. They successfully moved their school start times back to 7:45 a.m. for Tier 1 schools, and they have a 3-tiered busing system. I am more than happy to send you that public schools information. Final thought, rather than rushing into an earlier start, the district should focus on evidence-based policies that prioritize student health, academic success, and overall well-being. Would an alternative solution such as optimizing current schedules or investing in transportation improvements be a better approach? I heard you say that there is a surplus of drivers, so can we just create more routes?
Next, we'll have Elizabeth Kosmak.
Hi, Elizabeth Kosmak, K-O-S as in Sam, M as in Mary, A-C-H. I was here in 2018 when we discussed Tier 3 routing. It's not working. I'm sorry, I know the third tier, it's late. The first tier, it's unsafe to put our little students on a bus route. It's unsafe. And if we don't have enough staff, what about paying teachers for duty time, like they used to do for buses? There's creative ways. And my question to you is, did you talk, or during meet and confer, did you talk to MTEA about this? It's just not safe. I'm an early start, Tier 1. Kids are tardy. Buses are late. It's a fact of life. But as a teacher, having kids come early, they're tired. They're hungry. It takes a whole hour to get started with some kids because they're not fully awake. It's unsafe. It's not okay. And you need to talk to the constituents. Talk to the teachers who are there. There are a lot of teachers that are willing to help out if you're willing to talk to them and work together, collaborate. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Amanda Melhorn.
Good evening, everyone. So I had this really fancy thing all written, but I'm really irritated now. When I'm one of those weird people that stalks the board minutes until the agenda comes up, so I've been sitting on this for a week, and I got a lot of opinions. So when I started in this district 19 years ago, the start time for Tier 1 was 7:40. So we have essentially in 19 years rolled the start back 30 minutes. The thought of putting 3-year-olds on the bus at 6:30, or I guess 6:40, because in your 4 slides, you couldn't get the same information on the 2 slides together, that's weird, is startling. As a Tier 1 school already, 80% of my students arrive late. Why? They oversleep and miss the bus. So then they have to relay for parents to either get home from work or wait for their older siblings to get on the bus to bring them to school. So I guess my question then becomes, my class time starts at 7:25, I can't get started with education until 8. So I'm already losing 35 minutes. Now you want me to add 45? Oh, and then the 15 minutes at the end of the day that we have to pull our kids early to get on the bus. So now I'm losing an hour of my already shortened day. So when you devise this plan, could you also list a list of the subjects that you would like early start teachers to not teach, or be okay that kids are failing? Because right now, 80% of my kids are missing math and failing math. Oh, that's a NAP score issue, isn't it? Maybe you'll start caring. So to appease that, I've started putting my iReady, mandatory iReady, mandatory ST Math, but now I get daily emails from my principal that says, your student hasn't gotten their ST Math minutes. What do you prefer? Would you like them to have teacher-led instruction or a computer? Choice is yours, but you need to make a decision. We have to ask ourselves, what are we willing to give up? Are we willing to push our families, continue to push them out, and then look at our families and wonder why they're jumping ship and going to choice and charter schools that start at 8 o'clock? That is a much more convenient time. Or are we okay with putting 6-year-olds and 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds on a bus at 6:40 in the morning? That's when I leave for work, and I'm 44. And I still stop for Starbucks because I'm tired. And I'm a fully grown adult. But we are asking these babies to do things that many adults in this world would not do. And that is not fair. And you want to talk about equity? Let's go. Because you already sit here and preaching about sports and jobs, but 3-year-olds can get on a bus at 6:40 who haven't had breakfast, who haven't had a good night's sleep? Come on. The real bottom line is the 3-tier busing system is a failure. It's been a failure for 6 years. It continues to be a failure, and we continue to kick this can down the curb until we can have a real overhaul. This is going to continue.
Next, we have Owen Driscoll.
Aye.
Good evening. Would you state your name, spelling your last name?
Owen Driscoll, Driscoll.
Thank you.
President Herndon, members of the board, students need to get to school on time. When the bell schedule was changed, busing should have been changed. I support community involvement, but this is purely a logistical issue. Students are late to school, missing educational time. Kids are missing more than half of their first hour at my school due to late buses. The attendance office is unable to process the number of students who arrive on late buses. This should not be a difficult decision, but it should have been made when the bell schedule was changed, and it should have been clearly communicated to parents. Additionally, the late buses disproportionately harm low-income students like myself who rely on buses for transportation. I'm glad that this issue is finally being addressed. We don't need to be creative to address this issue. We need kids to be on time for school, and we need to do what works. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, that is the last of our public statements. Go ahead.
I move approval of this item.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
We need a second.
I thought you did the second.
I can't second.
Oh, that's, could we have a second, please? Okay. Director Zumber.
Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary, please call the roll. Yes.
I just want to clarify one thing. You're not changing, when it says 6:40, that's not changing 10 minutes, right? Like the kids are already, it doesn't actually change the busing schedule because the kids are already getting picked up at that time. And so I just want to clarify for anybody who is listening and paying attention that the greatest impact is a family like mine where I drop my daughter off at school because the kids on the buses are already on that bus at 6:40. So what is being proposed is changing the start time, not changing the bus route. Is that correct?
Administration.
Director O'Halloran, President Herndon, members of the board. That is in fact correct. The proposal is that we have effectively more staff in the buildings when the buses are there at 7:15 to release the buses because we already schedule for school bus students arrival prior to the bell.
Do you have follow-up? Okay. With that, go ahead, please.
On Director Gokul Gandhi's motion to approve the administration's recommendation, Director Ferguson,
No.
Director Garcia,
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi,
Aye.
Director Jackson,
No.
Director Leonard,
Aye.
Director O'Halloran,
Aye.
Director Seamson,
Aye.
Director Zomber,
Aye.
President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes and 2 noes. The motion passes.
I hope we're not the next
Madam
August
Se-
Charlotte
excuse
three-year-old
me.
died.
Excuse me, please. Okay. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 7 is action on monthly finance matters, authorization to make purchases, report on change orders in excess of $25,000, report on revenues and expenditures, report on budget transfers, report on contracts under $50,000, and cumulative total report, report on monthly grant awards, acceptance of donations. The recommendation is that the board authorize the purchases and accept the donations as listed in the attachments, with appropriate acknowledgement to be made on behalf of the board.
Thank you. Would administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent. For this item, the administration is requesting your approval of the monthly finance matters. Janine Adamczyk is here to address any questions you may have. Additionally, I'm joined by Aicha Sava, who will first explain the new look of the monthly finance reports.
Go ahead, please.
Good evening. Chair Herndon and fellow board members. I bring to you tonight our new monthly financial reports. Before you, you will see, since we skipped December as we were working on these reports, you will see the reports for October and November. It is the same information, but with a new look. Our cover page actually now has these half-moon gauges that show the percentage received for our revenues, and then on the second page, you'll see the percentages expended. And so the columns are kind of, well, the page is a lot cleaner. We also added, just kind of for clarity and transparency's sake, for categorically aided, we put the word grants next to it. For extension, we put the word Milwaukee Rec, just so that it's more easily understandable. And then on the third page, it's still the same, it's kind of the same table as it was before. It's just a little easier to read and maybe a little more modern, you could say. And then the last column with the percentage received and the percentage expended is just bolded and a little larger, so it's easier to see. And then on the last page, we actually put a little glossary, a definition of terms and columns on, since as I'm still learning all of this, since we have like the working budget, the final adopted budget. So we kind of put in all the definitions of those, and then the remaining balance, which also subtracts the encumbrances. And then, so that is kind of our new look for October. And again, it's because of the 2-month lag, it's October and November that's presented here tonight. And I mean, this will probably be a work in progress, so there may be things that need to be changed, or, as we're kind of going through and modernizing everything, we might come across something else that might be changed, but I am open to any questions if you have any right now.
Are there
Thank
any
you.
questions by board directors? Okay, with that, I do have one speaker slip. That is Quentin Claybon. Please state your name, spelling your last name.
Thanks. Quentin Claybon, K-L-A-B-O-N. Specifically talking about the Elevate K-12. So you are spending $2 million this year on virtual long-term substitute teachers, and later another $1 million per year to get people through Alverno College to become teachers for you. Thank you for doing what you have to do to put people in the classroom. But there's another way you should investigate that would raise quality and save you millions of dollars. Superintendent Underly put $20 million in the next state budget for teacher apprenticeships. Republicans voted unanimously for a similar plan based on work I did in my day job, and showed up for the first signing day with Governor Evers and the Departments of Public Instruction and Workforce Development in Elmbrook. Teacher apprenticeship is in 47 states. Both national teachers unions advocate for it, and President Trump's incoming Deputy Education Secretary co-invented it with former President Biden. How often can you say those sides agree? What is it? Future educators take their teaching courses up front in freshman and sophomore year. Then they do 4 semesters of student teaching under a master teacher instead of one, taking general education courses on nights and weekends. Wisconsin will reimburse 50% of a student's tuition up front, not up to 50. Current teachers who take on that challenge also get a bonus from the state. Apprentices can student teach as paraprofessionals or substitute teachers by junior year, so you are filling vacancies without adding extra costs. You can later hire those graduated teachers who now have 2 years of experience and will not quit because they panicked their first year. And with those benefits, you can recruit students who are men, not white, or from a low-income background, hiring from the community to serve the community. Other counties are ahead of us. To catch up is easy. First, call up Milwaukee Area Technical College, Alverno, and every other 4-year in the region and tell them to sign up for this program. Second, I think I get to say this, tell legislators to fund this teacher program. Even $4 million over 2 years would help solve your crisis. Critics, and sometimes I am critics, especially today, say Milwaukee Public Schools does not use its money as well as it could. I think that is sometimes not true. I think you have a big job in front of you, and you do not always have the luxury of planning long term. So here's an opportunity to save you $2 million a year forever. These types of savings add up. A few million here and a few million there, and now you have $20 million to pay art educators, install some air conditioning, or hire some counselors. So make this one of the last times you have to approve this contract and advance this in 2025. Thank you.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item? Director Jackson?
Yes, I move that we accept the monthly finance report as described.
Could I have a second, please? Director Simpson?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, the secretary will please call the roll.
On Director Jackson's motion to approve the administration's recommendation and accept the monthly reports as presented, Director Ferguson?
Aye.
Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Jackson?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Simpson?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
President Herndon?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 8 is action on the award of exception to bid contracts. The recommendation is that the board authorize the exception to bid contracts as set forth in the attachments to this item.
Would administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, we are asking your approval of this month's exceptions to bid contracts. Janina Domchik is here to assist with any questions you may have.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any speaker slips?
We do not have any on this item.
Board members, do you wish to make comments or ask questions? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the board with relation to this item?
I move to accept the award of exception to bid contracts.
A second, please. Director
second.
Leonard. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Gokul Gandhi's motion to approve the administration's recommendation and accept the award of exception to bid contracts, Director Ferguson?
Aye.
Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Jackson?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Simpson?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
President Herndon?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 9 is action on the award of professional services contracts. The recommendation is that the board authorize the professional services contracts as set forth in the attachments to this item.
Would administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, this evening we're asking your approval of the professional services contracts before you. Janina Domchik is still with me here to answer any questions you may have.
Madam Secretary, do we have any speaker slips?
We do not.
Okay. Do board members wish to ask questions or make comments on this item? Okay, if not,
I do.
oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Director Ferguson.
Can you guys explain the professional services contracts you're asking us to approve tonight?
Administration.
President Herndon, Director Ferguson, members of the board, Janina Domchik, Director of Procurement and Risk Management. We're bringing forth one contract for Oracle America for human resource cloud migration and hosting services. This is for the HR department, and it is to host the district human resource application PeopleSoft in the cloud. This will help protect the district by going to the cloud, as it helps with respect to security and potential disaster recovery.
Do you have follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay. Are there any more comments or questions from the board? Could we have a motion, please, on this item? Director Garcia.
I move to approve the professional service contracts as presented by administration.
Second.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Garcia's motion to approve the administration's recommendations as attached, Director Ferguson.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 10 is report on communication of required financial reports sent to the Department of Public Instruction. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent. At the board's request, the administration is sharing a list of required DPI financial reports. To outline this information, I have Ms. Aicha Salad, and together we will address any questions you may have.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, President Herndon and fellow board members. Aicha Sava, Chief Financial Officer. Actually DPI has a really nice report that they do put out every year for the school districts that have all of our required, and then reports that are also deemed necessary sometimes every year or not every year. So we kind of reformulated that report so it was easier to read for you. And so the way that we did this was the left-hand side of this report shows all of the required reports that we have to submit every year. And you can see in here, most of these are by, the financial services, the Office of Finance. There are a couple in here related to enrollment that are submitted by Student Services. And then also on the right side, we have a list of reports that, they may be due in certain years as certain requirements are met, but they are not always required to be submitted on an annual basis. Now, on the left side with the required reports, what we did do was we highlighted the reports in green that are submitted and complete. And then the ones that you see highlighted in yellow are actually, we did submit them on the times that are listed on the due dates. But since they are based on 2024 financial data, there is a chance that they may be revised, as we will be starting the 2024 financial audit this coming Monday. So that is just kind of there as an FYI that, there is a chance that the numbers may be changed there. And then I just want to briefly highlight kind of the most important reports that are on here that we submit. So the 1505 AC, which is number 4, the 1505 annual report, which is number 7, and then WISE grants, which is number 8. This is doing all of our federal grant claiming. And then the 1505 SE, which is number 10. This is the district detailed special education data. And then finally, number 15 is the financial statements, the ACFR. And those are due by the middle of December. So that is my presentation on the reports, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any speaker slips on this item?
We have no speaker slips on this item.
Okay. Are there board members that wish to make comments or ask questions? Director Leonard.
Just thank you. I can actually understand these. Oops. I'm good, right? Mm-hmm. Never mind. Yeah, so just thank you. I was looking at the organizational charts and everything else, and I thought, wow, it's very clear for me, so I appreciate the changes and the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Director Simpson.
I would just concur with Director Leonard. Sometimes the finances can be so fuzzy, and how it's presented makes such a difference. So it's really nice to have a chart in front of us that And it's not only easy to read and clear, you know, it highlights what's done, what's in the works, we can see when it's due, so just, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. Moving on, Madam Secretary.
Next item is item 11, action on monthly facilities matters, FMS award of professional services contracts, material purchase, change order, and contract modification recommendation. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached professional services contracts, material purchase, change order, and contract modification.
Thank you. Administration, please present this item.
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, Interim Superintendent, we are asking your approval of this month's facilities matters. I have here with me Sean Kane to address any questions you have concerning this item. Thank you.
Okay. I have one speaker slip, and that is Quentin Claybon, please.
Hello, Quentin Claybon, K-L-A-B-O-N. I just want to repeat some things you all saw from Perkins Eastman over the last year. They did really clear and great work in many respects, analyzing capacity, helping you understand what regions use which district schools, and meeting with leading stakeholders. You also saw them give 4 presentations to the public that led with 45 minutes of data nerdery that I loved, but the audience detested. You saw them struggle to control rooms that were very bitter about past leaders' choices, even though they were not the fault of theirs or yours, including screaming. You saw them drastically underestimate your population loss, having really unrealistic projections for how many students Milwaukee and Milwaukee Public Schools will lose. You saw them recommend only close 13 schools within the next 10 years when getting to normal 85% capacity might be quadruple that. You saw them bluntly recommend closing schools only in the same part of town, the part already bitter toward you. Areas with multiple low usage schools need more efficient schools or fewer schools, not no schools. You saw them exaggerate Milwaukee's current building usage, which I genuinely found disgusting. They said 80% when it was really 75%, probably 74% this year, which is a huge difference in the total of kids. It may make sense to renew the contract, but I encourage you to hold them accountable to do better over the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you. Do board members wish to make comments or ask questions on this item? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item?
I move that we accept the facilities report as described.
Second, please.
Second.
Director Garcia, thank you. With no further discussions, please call the roll.
On Director Jackson's motion to approve the monthly facilities matters, Director Ferguson.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran. Oh, sorry, stepped down. Director Seamson. Director Zomber.
Aye.
President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 12 is action on a request to approve the second corrective action plan relative to a communication from the Department of Public Instruction. The recommendation is that the board approve the second CAP corrective action plan 2 as attached to this item.
Okay, would administration please present this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, Interim Superintendent. The Office of Accountability and Finance, will lead us in this presentation. If OEA doesn't, anyway.
President Herndon, Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. It was in May of last year that the board received a communication from DPI related to the untimely submission of statutory required financial reporting. In addition to leadership and administrative changes that this board made to address those deficiencies, the board also approved a corrective action plan in collaboration with the Department of Public Instruction. One of the provisions of that initial corrective action plan was the creation of a second corrective action plan. The first one was really geared towards developing a plan that would get us up to speed with everything that was already late, essentially FY23, and I'll let the administration speak to the updates on that. The corrective action plan in front of you was really more forward-facing. If I were to provide sort of a high-level summary, section number 1 refers to the FY24. Section number 1 refers to FY23, and again, I'll let the administration give you an update on that. Section number 2 refers to FY24. As the CFO mentioned earlier, that external audit is going to begin next week, Monday. Section number 3 refers to FY25. We do have, I think, we built this plan to arrive at what would be a regular reporting schedule beginning in FY25. I don't think it is a stretch to label it as aggressive, but it's the one that allows us to now meet statutory requirements beginning in FY25. There'll be challenges with that, to be sure, but I think it is the right approach, and I agree with the approach that's been taken with this thus far. Section number 4 then, lastly, is the process improvements, really looking at the problems of practice, policies, procedures that were done in the Office of Finance that I think we can improve. And with that, I'm going to turn over to the administration.
Good evening, President Herndon and fellow board members. Like Mr. Chasen said, Section 1 of the CAP 2.0 does, highlights our last steps that we needed to do for fiscal year 23. And I did want to just start out that 23 ACFR, the financial statements, was actually issued right before the holidays on December 20th of 2024. So it was a great way for us to all enter into the holiday season. And we do acknowledge, it actually says it in our transmittal letter in the financial statements that it was a year late, but we did get it done and it was correct. I think that is one of the most important things that we do need to highlight is that, I came in on the first day of school, I started here, and we were trying to finalize and get the 2023 financials issued. We had a little challenges in those first couple of months, but, the main thing for externally audited financial statements is that you do want them to be materially correct. And I will say that we did issue in December, which was later than we thought it was going to be, but they are correct. They are materially correct. And that is very important because we have investors, we have everybody that needs to utilize that information. And I will say, as I said, it was issued on the 20th. One of the first things that we did also do was it is listed on the MO website, which is where all the investors go for, to look at organizations' financial statements. And then in the new year, we just, two Fridays ago, we did issue the single audit, which is in connection. It's kind of like the second half of the external, the financial statement. So that is the audit of all of our grants and awards that we receive. So that was issued on January 17th. And then also, with that, there's a communication letter that the external auditor also issues at the same time. And those will all be coming forward to the Finance Committee next month in February. So the auditors will be here to discuss all of that as well. But at the same time, I do want to just give a huge shout out to our financial services team in the Office of Finance. That's grant accounting, financial reporting, and general accounting. And then we also had other people from other sections that were helping us along the way as we were trying to get these out. They've been here on nights and weekends, and along the same line as we're preparing and getting everything closed out for 2024, it's the same thing. So we've been here on nights and weekends. I was here 7 days. I think I've been here more than my own house. So we're getting there. We're doing really well. And so kind of with that, in the second section, we do have all of our timeline and our deadlines set for the 2024 audit. Now, obviously the 2024 audit financials were due around the time we issued the 2023 financials. But as you can see in the CAP, it is outlined as we, drafted this CAP in collaboration with DPI that we will hopefully be issuing kind of in late spring. And like I mentioned earlier, and in one of the earlier agenda items, we are starting the audit on Monday, on February 3rd. So we are, working steadily, and we are we will be issuing the 2024 audit in the spring, and that will, hopefully then get us back up. Like Mr. Chasen said, that will kind of get us caught up. And at the same time, the Section 4 of the CAP 2.0 does have all of our process improvements outlined. And I will just say, as the audit is coming next month to the 2023 financials, a lot of our process improvements in the CAP and then some of our findings that we do also have in the external audit, they overlap a lot just because that makes sense, since, some of the deficiencies that we had over the years are, the auditors find it, and then, it's part of, they were reporting issues as well. So they're kind of obviously aligned and moving forward together. And then lastly, I did also just want to mention that, we've started some internal tracking mechanisms to make sure that we are, meeting these targets in the CAP, but also, giving us kind of some lead time in planning out those process improvements, rewriting some of our financial accounting manuals. So, they are kind of all up, and we did, and we've been staffed up. We have our new grant accounting manager and our comptroller that just actually started in January. So they kind of started right during busy season, as the audit speak would go. So hopefully then we will be moving forward, and everybody will be kind of making those process improvements together. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all that hard work in such a short time. I think I speak for everyone to say thank you. I have a speaker and slip here with Quentin Claiborne again. Okay, go ahead, please state your name, spell your last name.
Thank you so much. Quentin Claiborne, K-L-A-B-O-N. I do understand that it took a while to hire Officer Sala, who seems like a spectacular choice, to resolve auditor grumpiness and to restructure a system from a morass of financial files. You've indicated, and you did indicate, that you would not hit the November deadlines the Department of Public Instruction set for you, though you said December. Good or bad, that is transparent, and thank you for the 7-day work weeks, truly. I genuinely mean that. I absolutely do not understand being silent about progress over the last 2 months. You canceled the finance meeting 2 weeks ago, or could not hit quorum for the meeting. You canceled and postponed the 2026 budget meeting. You did not hit DPI's November deadlines by this month, January, just getting to 90%, I believe was the comment, on the corrective action plan. Because of this backlog, you scheduled yourselves to miss your state, as mentioned, and federal audit deadlines in December and March. Hey, heads up, President Trump and Secretary McMahon. We are not going to turn our audits on time this year, and 2025 documents are only on time until they need to reference your late documents. I understand not wanting to create 2 months of bad press, but not getting out in front of this is just ugly. And while I understand being afraid or restricted by the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association on things like ensuring children can read, I genuinely do. Look at who the next board members will be. It is really interesting to me that you are not afraid of the Department of Public Instruction. Speaking of them, the Department of Public Instruction kept the public in the dark as well after puffing out their chest for 2 weeks in June so you could take all the fire. So I genuinely want 3 answers. What consequences are there for you or other districts, critically, if you miss the state and especially federal audits? If you get it in by June 2025, are you safe and are other districts safe? Perhaps that's true, and that would be great news. The corrective action plan says Superintendent Underly is supposed to meet with you every 6 months, starting August 1st, 2024. So is she meeting with you in the next couple of weeks, and what has she said about being late? 3, do DPI and Superintendent Underly stand fully behind this plan? You'll have to answer that question sometime, so I hope you answer it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
We have no other speaker slips on this item.
Do board members wish to make comments on this item?
Just thank you.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the board in relationship to this item? Director Jackson?
I move that we accept the approved second corrective action plan as
Correct.
described.
A second, please? Director Garcia?
Second.
If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Jackson's motion to approve the second corrective action plan as attached to this item, Director Ferguson.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, are there any communications for referral to committee?
No, Madam President, we have no communications.
Madam Secretary, are there any resolutions for referral to committee?
No, Madam President, we have no resolutions for referral.
Madam Secretary, what is the next item on our agenda?
Madam Chair, we are back to the items that were previously deferred.
Madam Secretary, would you remind us of those items, please?
The items from the reports and communications from the Board Clerk Chief Officer that were deferred are action on a request to retire to closed session to confer with legal counsel with respect to pending or probable litigation and pending or probable negotiations. Action on a request to retire to closed session to confer with legal counsel with respect to implementing school resource officers as a result of Act 12. And action on a request to retire to closed session to consider a special report. The recommendation is that these items be considered in closed session.
The chair will accept a motion to consider these items in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes. 19.85(1) G, for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the board who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the board with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. 19.85(1) C, for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the board has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. 19.85(1) F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations. 19.85(1) E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or collective bargaining purposes require closed session. 19.85(1) D, for the purpose of considering strategy for crime detection or prevention. Does anyone so move?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. The board will now retire to closed session to discuss the
I gotta
item.
call
We
it.
got to vote on it.
I'll call it on Director Gokul Gandhi's motion to retire to closed session pursuant to
Oh, that's
Wisconsin
right.
statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent C, D, E, F, and G. Director Ferguson. Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson. Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
The board will now retire to closed session to discuss the items read by our secretary. The board may return to open session to take action on matters discussed in closed session. Otherwise, the board will adjourn from closed session. Madam Secretary, please note the time.